the nerves.
Mm-hmm.
Women do earn less in America because they choose to. They would rather go to their daughter's piano recital than stay all night at work working on a proposal.
What?
So they end up earning less. They're less ambitious. And I think this is sort of God's way. This is nature's way of saying women should be at home with the kids. They're happier there.
Atheists are great people. Great people. It's God's country. Get those signs down. Get them down. Evil will happen in Corpus Christi. Get them down.
And welcome to Atheist Airwaves, episode number 87. I'm Christian Ferris.
I'm Jeff Grime.
I'm Heather Schaefer.
And I'm Ryan Trexler.
We record live every Tuesday at 7:30 Central, Ryan. So if you're interested in listening, you could show up maybe sober. And everyone out there could also show up and participate in the Ustream.com chat room. Our intro audio this week is a writer and co-founder of Vice Media and noted douchebag Gavin McInnes demonstrating in less than 30 seconds why women's issues, gay issues, race issues, children's issues, on and on and on are also atheist issues because God wants cookie cutter people so guys like Gavin don't have to be around people who aren't like them. But I also want to be fair to this guy. And so, Heather, why don't you talk a little bit about why you think he has kind of a point?
Okay.
Sorry, I'm just totally messing with you.
Thank you.
The pre-show, though, you were talking about how you just really wanted to stay at home.
Right.
You know what? That's not a lie. I do want to stay at home because Ryan just the other day texted me and said, "How's work?" And I said, "Well, it's not as great as being independently wealthy."
Yeah.
So to be fair, I rather be that, but it's not because I'm a woman. It's because it's not as good as being independently wealthy. So
You don't think that's God's way?
I wish it were God's way that I were independently wealthy. That would be fantastic.
All right. So let's go down the list here. So women don't work as hard as men. They don't work as long as men. They're more focused on family, blah, 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 blah. None of that, if you look at the data, explains the wage gap. None of it.
Yeah, people try to take the wage gap and say things like, well, they're not as career oriented, which if you want to say that and you can back that up with numbers, which I don't think you can, but if you want to say that generally, then that's a thing. But you can't then say what happens is that women doing the same job as men who go to school the same amount of time or have the same amount of experience, and there's still the wage gap. It completely debunks it, and everything this guy says has been completely debunked.
Yep.
The interview, actually, the question was about Hillary Clinton's campaign and when she was Secretary of State, paying women less than men, and it's completely just made up data by right-wing conservative think tank type stuff. I don't know if you guys watched this entire video, but I couldn't not want to strangle the guy. And I keep saying I'm not a violent person, but
every time you talk about some guy, you're like, I want to strangle him.
Well, you know, when Sean Hannity's backing away from somebody, you know there's got to be a problem.
That bothered me actually more than what this guy said. I actually think the woman on the interview totally overreacted because my reaction would have been to look at him and go, "Are you done?" If you read anything about this guy, I forget his name. I don't care what his name is.
Gavin McInnes.
Okay, Gavin McInnes. He is an actor, which I think we're throwing that term around loosely. He is a creative director, and he is an adequate writer. And he has found his niche in nonsense, regurgitating age-old stereotypes and making them an extreme to be on TV. And where are you going to get on TV with that shit? Fox News.
Yeah, sounds just like Sean Hannity. He fits right in.
I gotta say, I don't think he's trolling. He's not. This is his honest.
Yeah, he thinks this.
I don't think he thinks this.
Oh, yes.
Did you read any of his other stuff? Any of his
Oh
other
yeah, I'm well
articles?
acquainted with Gavin McInnes.
Okay,
yeah.
where does he then again reference God or God's way to justify any of his other rhetoric?
Well, I'm not sure about the God part, but I'm just saying this is his philosophy. And what bothered me actually was Sean Hannity. I mean, this is Fox News. Sean Hannity. Sean Hannity's a douchebag. He's always a douchebag.
Given.
Right. I was really surprised at the way he handled this, because while he was embarrassed and kind of face palmed a little bit because he was so aggressive, Gavin McInnes was so aggressive and so over the top with how he was saying it, he clearly agreed with what he was saying.
Yeah, he tried to laugh about it and be like, I can't believe you're saying this. And we all know
I can't
Sean
believe you're
Hannity.
saying what we really think
Right.
on the air.
And we all know Sean Hannity. He is this. This embodies him. But like Christian said, when he even backs away, and he doesn't back away, what he does is laugh about it and try to play it off. But he does, and that was the most upsetting thing to me, because if you have somebody that spouts ridiculous things on your show, and you allow it, even if you're just laughing about it, then you are just as culpable. And
I gotta say, it's worse than that, because at the very end of this segment, you know, the whole thing, he's just being silent and face palming like, oh, I can't believe you said it that way. At the very end, he takes Gavin's side against this woman who is on his show. And so clearly the only thing Sean Hannity says during this whole thing is, no. What he's saying is right. And that's the only thing he says. Clearly he believes it.
the only thing he's embarrassed on face palming about is that, I can't believe you're actually saying this on my show.
Yeah.
For me.
Right. So bluntly.
So I have a question. The Department of Labor estimates that about 40% of the pay gap is related to discrimination. But there is some truth to the fact that women drop out of the workforce to have children and get paid somewhat less because of that. And I wonder if, like healthcare, where we have new rules that say you cannot tax women for being women, you can't charge women more for healthcare because they're women. Is there something, because women are the only ones who, females are the only ones who give birth to children. Do we need a similar rule like that?
Yeah. In this country, we have a real problem with non-paid maternity leave or paternity leave, and I think that's part of the problem. What happens, and I can't speak to this, I don't know, but maybe Heather can. A woman applies for a job, and they want to know how many kids does she have, and does she plan on having any more?
Yeah, they're not
Totally
allowed to
illegal.
ask that.
Yeah.
But
No, yeah,
I
they're
have been asked that on several occasions.
And I will tell you, I have had women come to me and ask for career advice. And they said, I'm applying for this position and I'm pregnant. Should I tell them? I'm like, no, don't tell them. And it's like, but people have not taken my advice and said, well, I feel like I'm being dishonest if I don't tell them. And I've had women who have been applying for positions in my department and said, I'm pregnant. And I was like, don't tell me that. I don't care. But B, that has nothing to do with this process.
Is it mine? Then it's none of my business.
Exactly. And unfortunately they only hurt themselves when they volunteer that information, because
but we shouldn't be hurting ourselves.
No, if it's somebody like Christian, he's not going to care. So then it doesn't matter. But if it's not somebody like Christian, then
and most of the time it won't be.
Exactly.
Most of the time,
especially if it's anywhere in our 300-mile radius. Yeah.
Well, and the unfortunate thing about discrimination laws, regardless, is that they're basically impossible to apply.
Yeah.
I mean, every tooth that was put into them has been systematically removed over the past 15 years.
And I have to tell you, it's worse than even that. Because I have had a company, the CFO of a company, email me at work and say, I need to hire some people at my oil drilling company, and they need to have this degree and this many years experience or whatever, and they all have to be men. And I would say, that's illegal, man. And literally what he wrote me back was, you don't understand. If you have a woman on a drilling site, no work will get done because everyone will be too distracted. I've been in this business long enough to know that's true. And so we have to do that.
That is so all those men's problem.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And the company's problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you hire a man who can't work because there's a woman in a 60-yard radius, that person needs to go, or they need some serious training.
You need a new HR department is what you need.
Yeah, I don't understand if that's what you think of your workers. Like, how do you think those workers function when they go to the mall? Like, there's women within 60 yards of me all these times.
Like it's one of those, like your penis is one of those Y-shaped water sticks, and it's just
A
like,
water
whoa,
diviner.
yeah, the water diviners, and it's just like, whoa, bam, right into a chick. Be like, I'm sorry, I can't control it. It drug me across the mall.
That's intro audio material right there.
I do want to just point out that in the first world, in the industrialized world, there are only 4 countries who have a wider pay gap than the United States. And we are one of the only industrialized nations who don't have a guaranteed paternity, maternity leave law. FMLA is completely inadequate for that purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Anything else anyone else to say about that?
It's terrible.
Yeah.
It needs
I
to
think
be
we all
revamped.
agree it's terrible.
I do want to...
I always like to take kind of the optimistic view on that, and that is I think it's going to have to change, and I think it's going to have to change partly because look at the education gap and look at what's happening there, because right now men just are not getting degrees.
Yeah, well, I got to tell you, because I work at a university, and we just recently had an outside consultant come in to help us because we're in South Texas, and so we have a retention problem. We have students who are ill-prepared for college coming in, and they don't succeed. They don't finish. And the very first piece of advice he gave us was, if you want to improve your retention, admit more women, because women finish. And so what this guy says is exactly the opposite. And in fact, in today's world, women hold more bachelor's degrees than men.
Well, we have to, because we can't just walk into a job and get one on our penis. So,
yeah. So, I mean, everything that this Gavin McInnes guy just said, the opposite is true. And it is also true that if you look at women in their 20s who are unmarried without children, they outperform men. They outperform men, which makes me think that this whole thing, misogynistic system is set up because women would just kick our ass if we don't like hold them down. If we don't, if you don't like shackle them in some way, they just kick your ass. So I mean, you have to.
Yeah, and this guy, I mean, I don't want to go on.
The misandry is kidding.
Yeah. And he goes on about how the woman that he's arguing with is actually secretly miserable and would be much happier if she was at home and married with kids. And I can't understand that. I can't understand the thinking that goes behind that. Other than, like you said, you're trying to keep the better half of the species down or something like that. But I just can't even.
So a couple of comments out of the chat room that I wanted to bring out. Ustreamer 19531 says, during the flood this week, so we're in Corpus Christi, and we have had rain out the ass. Like, they stopped praying for it and it started coming. And it's been awful. Like, I travel 60 miles to work, and it's been hard getting to work. I mean, you just can't, and I've almost killed myself. I'm used to being up north where you have blizzards, and blizzards make it. I've never lived in a place where rain can make it hard to get to work. But she says, during the flood this week, one of my coworkers noted that a dad who came in late to take his kid to school was Father of the Year, while women who did the same were not committed to her job. And that is that's exactly what happens in this culture. There was one other that I wanted to bring out. I don't see it now. Tech Leslie in the chat room, she also lives in Texas, says, between my health and my vagina, this is not the ideal place for me to be. Oh dear. Fucking Texas. All right. So we had some listener feedback from last week's show that echoed something that I was thinking almost nonstop after the show. This was regarding this story about the atheist professor who was abusing the Christian student by making her think things or explore positions that were not in keeping with her Christian beliefs. So I just wanted to touch on this briefly. Robert is a member of our local humanist group here in Corpus Christi, and he wrote, I was visiting with one of my former college professors a few days ago, and the subject came up. As I had some 3 classes with writing assignments I thought were bunk, I struggled with them a while before I figured it out. I gave them exactly what I thought the instructor wanted or thought his or his opinion was. Bingo, A in each class, all BS, but got an A and moved on. A lesson well learned beyond college. Now, last week I was talking about the value in critical thinking and being exposed to alternate points of view. But I'm not sure if figuring out, being able to figure out what a college professor wants and then regurgitating the message he wants you to regurgitate is useful in any way other than learning how to kiss up to people with power.
It is the ultimate brown-nosing ability.
Yeah. I mean, and that is useful.
And it, we live in the actual world, and having that skill can actually be beneficial at certain times. It's shit that skill is necessary or beneficial. Mm-hmm. And it's shitty that people have to go to college and write papers to appease their professors. But on a level playing field, atheists and religious people all have to deal with it. So as it pertains to the discussion in the show, I think, whether you're religious and writing for an atheist professor or atheist and writing for a religious professor, everybody has to deal with writing to their professor's bias equally. So, that's my opinion.
It's not just bias, it's style. It's having taught college English, the first thing that I always taught was, look, before you do anything else, I mean, really, in writing, the first thing you want to aim at is who's your audience. Mm-hmm. And if your audience is a particular professor, it's important to know what that professor's biases are. Yeah. And what that professor likes in the writing. If that professor likes for you to argue, then that's fine, and you can take a different point. Right. And, it's smart to sit down and discuss it with the professor before you turn something in. That doesn't mean that you have to do something that you consider BS. Right. But it's an important thing. I write every day. I write in order to get points across. I write to try to win all the time. And if I'm writing for a particular judge who does not want a 17-page brief, which is most judges, right? I mean, really, most of them don't want to read page upon page of shit. I'm not going to give them page upon page of shit. I'm going to give them 2 pages that make a concise legal argument. And I won't feel bad if the next week I'm making the opposite argument and saying, look, Your Honor, I know that this is the law. I know I've talked to you about this law before, but it shouldn't apply in this particular instance because of blah, blah, blah. And I don't feel bad about that, Yeah.
I love the mental image of a judge going, TLDR.
Right. I swear that has to happen in most courtrooms in this country. It just has to. In fact, I'm sure there are Supreme Court judges that we have that do exactly that.
Yeah. I mean, isn't it the point, though, of college, more than to teach you things you don't know, is to make you think outside the box? Yeah. So if you're pandering to your professor and it's not easy for you to do because you think it's bullshit, it's still teaching you to think outside the box. So it is useful, even if it's not useful in the way, like you said, of kissing ass of power. Yeah. It's still very useful.
Ince Mike in the chat room says something which I agree with 100%. He says, the prof in this case sounded like he was trying to teach them a certain way to think, not necessarily what to think. No matter how smart her paper sounded, she missed the lesson. And I think that's exactly right. I think that all people think they're right in their positions, because if you didn't think you were right, hopefully you would change your position, right? I mean, if I thought I was wrong about something, I would endeavor to not be wrong about that anymore.
That's
wishful thinking.
That is a very unique position for reason-based thinkers. Yeah. I get your point, and I think everybody in this room would agree with you that if you were wrong, you would change your opinion. But I think there's plenty of real-world experience where that's not the case.
Yeah. I agree with that. Okay. So thank you for writing to us, Robert. If you guys would like to write to make a point, ask a question, tell us we're wrong, tell us we're awful people, some of us are, you can write to us at god@atheistairwaves.com, head over to our Facebook page, or comment over on atheistairwaves.com and tell us what you want and participate in the show. So let's move on to news. Or actually, before we get to news, we have an update to a story we covered a few weeks ago. Willoughby South High School was the subject of a threatening letter from Americans United for the Separation of Church and State when their choir teacher wrote an opera called I Am Martal for his public school students to perform that featured religious ideas and imagery, all of which were Christian, of course. We were trying at the time when we covered this story to be fair and cautious about it because there were very few details. But a settlement has now been reached in this case that I think removes all doubt about what these people were doing and whether it was appropriate or not. Basically, it's the same story we see over and over and over again. School officials are like, yeah, we're going to fight this. These atheists can't hold us down, man. And then they send it over to their legal team and the lawyers say, whoa, what are you thinking? This is clearly not okay. And so they have backed down. And to remove any doubt that it was inappropriate, they're now going to perform this opera at the local Catholic high school. There's no chance that this was not okay at this point. None of the school, there are 3 school officials who were involved in the play in terms of helping them out, performing, writing, all that. None of them are going to be allowed to be involved in the play. And I'm okay with them going forward. You know, these students have First Amendment rights. They can go and they can perform this play at this Catholic high school, and Flying Spaghetti Monster bless them. But they literally spent over a year's worth of school employee time, class time, resources into building this thing, and it still sticks in my craw a little bit that they're just going to go forward as if this was not a publicly funded religious endeavor.
Right. I was going to wait till the end to make that point. But basically, from the point when somebody realized this isn't okay, we can't sponsor this, we can't be involved in this, I don't have a problem with how they proceeded from there. It is the same people's fault, but you can't keep faulting them for previously bad mistakes. So from that point on, I have no problem with them going on doing the play as long as there's not teachers and choir directors playing the piano for the play. Then I'm fine.
Frankly, I don't have any problems with the teachers or the directors or any of them playing the piano for it, as long as it's on their own time. I think they went so far as to say that these people aren't actually going to be involved in it, because they would basically be directing. The legal counsel said, look, you just need to back off of this. This needs to not happen.
Well, I think you would have a case if these people spent a year plus devoting public resources to this, and then they were involved in the thing at the end, then I would have a major problem. As it is, I don't have a major problem because it's just the students. It's not in a public school. It's perfectly fine, other than they spent all of our time and money in developing this thing.
Oh my God, and it's horrible. Did you see any of this?
Oh,
any of the transcript?
No.
Oh my God, it's
no,
awful.
I looked for it. I couldn't
listen
find
to this.
it.
Okay, I'll just start off with part of it.
Oh no. Okay.
Martal, who art there? Who art thou? What art thou? I am called Charis. I have come with an offer of help. What offer? I need it not. Curios sent me, Martal. Curios? What is this curious name? I know it not. All right, look, this is written like last year.
Right.
You know, and it is just this pretentious junk. And it's clearly...
it sounds like someone who has read Shakespeare but has not understood it.
It's written to sound very King Jamesy.
Yeah.
It definitely
like they used an app to translate modern English.
Oh, that's exactly what they did. I mean, they took Greek names and transcribed them, and what it is Martal is sinner, Kurios is Lord, and the other one is Jesus.
I read the
basically,
synopsis, but
Jesus.
I couldn't find any of the actual script.
Right, oh god, it's hilarious. It's worth looking up. I found this little piece of it in the Cleveland High Plains Dealer, and the guy who actually wrote the letter, the Rob Boston, I
From
think
Americans United?
yeah, from Americans United. He wrote back and said, look, the Cleveland High Plains Dealer gave, their entire editorial board looked at this and gave it shit. And I wrote to them and said, look, I'll tell you why we wrote this letter. And I, just, hey, give me, half a page and I'll write a little editorial on it and explain exactly why it happened. What they said is, well, why don't you just write a 200 word letter to the editor and we can publish that. And he's like, no, I can't explain that.
Yeah.
I might as well just tweet to you what my response is, which was hilarious.
It'd be like F you. That would be the tweet because that's all you could really explain to them in that short format. Did anyone see the fundraiser they're doing around it?
Yeah.
Oh
yes,
God.
I did.
Oh God. Because okay, so the opera's name is I Am Martall, and they're selling shirts and stickers that say "We are Martall." Like this is like we're solidarity. We're gonna stand up to we're not gonna stand up to the atheists, but we're gonna be angry about it when we do it.
And the thing is they acted like the UA just like swooped in and crushed these young kids' dreams. Yep. And I'm like, I don't think you understand how people's rights are protected in this country. This is I think you're confused.
You were wrong.
Yeah. It's people are like, well, it's a gray area. I'm like,
no.
It's not a gray area. And I understand, I empathize with the kids. Maybe they don't really understand. Maybe it's a gray area to them. They all they know is they put a lot of time and effort into this, and
sure.
Maybe they don't understand on a fundamental level how this is wrong, and I kind of feel bad for them, but I'm mad at the adults for allowing them to put in all this time and effort and then have their poor little baby dreams crushed. And I was looking up this opera because I didn't know what it was. I didn't cover it on a show, and I may have missed the show. And I'm like, is this some 500-year-old opera that pertains to a thespian culture? Because if you're doing any period piece at all, it's going to have some quote unquote, as they said, religious undertones.
Yeah, absolutely.
But if it's cultural and it's relevant to the thespian culture, then fine. But I was like, oh, the choir director wrote it.
Yeah,
that's a bunch of bullshit.
And it's thinly veiled, and it's I'm almost.
And those are not undertones, by the way. The UA was very nice by calling those cultural undertones. Those are not undertones.
No. It's very, very thinly veiled. It's obvious what it's meant to be, and it's straightforward. This sinner redemption little story that he's gone with. And it's clearly meant to represent Jesus.
Right.
Yeah.
So...
Right. Well, and, they have, the character named Sin, the character named, Redemption. We were trying to be really, really fair when we covered this story because, like I said, the details were very sketchy. But it's clear that these people were so far outside of the law and the Constitution. It's not even, please, people, please. And if you read their website, they are trying so hard to prop up this persecution complex while simultaneously not saying anything that might get them in additional trouble with the law.
I was almost more bothered by how horrible it was on reading it than I was by the fact that it was a thinly veiled religious reference.
You're like, I may have let this slide if it wasn't a big pile of shit.
But that's one of the things that I said during the original story, which is you can't look at Western culture, Western literature, Western art without being steeped in religion. That is just, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's just,
and if you're
that's
talking about it neutrally and how it affects our society, how it built our society, then that's one thing. But a school district cannot promote or appear to promote
Right.
any religion at all.
And this is not historical. This is something this dude wrote last year.
And wrote terribly, according to Jeff.
Yeah, well, and I think I think there were some valid arguments made. You know, there is room to have material that is religious based to be presented. I have no problem with Jesus Christ Superstar being presented, but you know that is presenting the story of Jesus, but with other cultural references. I mean, it's meant to be. There's a lot more being said there than it's just. I mean, basically, it's taking any. You could take any myth and do the same thing with it and present it, and it's going to have different cultural relevance. This didn't have any cultural relevance.
Yeah. It was just proselytizing. It was bad proselytizing. It wasn't clever. It wasn't art. It was just dumb. Goodbye, car.
I didn't know about the Greek name conversion that they did for the show, and when you said that, it rung in my head of intelligent design people, you know, changing the word God into intelligent design and all their propaganda to try to get that kind of thing in their schools.
Yep.
I read something that said, well, how do you pronounce it? Mortal means sinner in Greek, but is it just mortal rearranged? I'm like, grasping at straws a bit, aren't we? Is it just mortal rearranged? I'm like, well, yeah, and it means sinner in Greek. Coincidence.
Okay, it's all stupid, so let's stop talking about it. All right, let's move on to news. This week, 59-year-old Monty Hansen, who is a Jewish man, he's also sitting in jail right now. Early this past Saturday morning, Monty went to Hamilton's Rainbow Bar and ordered a red beer, which is a drink I have never, ever heard before. Has anyone else heard of this thing before?
You live in South Texas and you don't know what a red beer is?
Really?
Yeah.
This is a thing?
It's a thing down here.
Thing.
My mother drinks them.
She drinks Miller Lite on ice, though.
Your mom.
But no, it's definitely a thing.
It sounds gross. It's basically a beer with tomato juice in it.
Right.
Ugh. Who would, I mean, early in the morning, okay, maybe.
To be fair, I would shoot anyone who gave me a beer with tomato juice.
What have you done with this beer, you sick son of a bitch? So anyway, instead of tomato juice, the bartender, who was 29-year-old Joe Lewis, added clamato juice, which is clam juice and tomato juice mixed together.
Isn't it clamato?
Clamato? I don't know.
Clamato. Yeah.
It is clamato.
I don't know. This is another thing that I've never heard of before. It's crazy. And this really made Monty upset after he drank it because, as we all know, Leviticus 11, verse 10 says that eating shellfish is an abomination. It's exactly like having sex with another dude.
Yeah.
That's what drinking clamato is about.
I don't know how they sell clamato in this country because there's another really big Abrahamic religion that has that book in their Bible too.
All three of them.
Yeah.
I don't know how they sell clamato in this country, but that has other reasons.
Yeah, that's a taste thing. Yeah.
All right. So he was upset because his book says you can't, eating shellfish is an abomination, just like having gay sex. I do want to point out.
How does his book feel about shooting people?
Well, we'll get to that.
Okay.
It's
kind of lenient, actually.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, it depends on how you interpret it. But I do want to note that he was drinking this in an establishment called the Rainbow Bar.
Yeah.
So I feel like there may be a little more psychological stuff going on here, that maybe he doth protest too much, and maybe he's thinking about Leviticus a little too much for a reason. I don't know that for a fact. I'm just saying. So anyway, Monty gets very angry. He goes home. He's stewing about this and walking around very angry until he finally tells his neighbor, you know what? I'm going to go shoot that guy who maybe drinks something that is just like having anal sex with a man. And I know this is like 2 weeks
Which
in a
I
row.
totally don't like.
Exactly. This is like 2 weeks in a row that I've talked about how to commit crimes effectively. But I want to offer this pro tip, which is if you're about to go kill somebody, don't tell people about it.
That is instantly premeditation.
Yeah. How hard is that to figure out? Okay. So, And then, so he goes to shoot this guy. He shoots him. He comes out of his apartment. He's carrying his dog, shoots twice. Oh, no, actually shoots like 4 to 6 times. Only hits anything twice because he's like apparently completely drunk on Clamato juice.
He's totally responsible gun owner.
Exactly. So the first shot hits the dog in the head and kills the dog. A shot that the owner says would have killed him had it gone through. The other shot hits him in the rib cage and doesn't hit any organs, so he survives. And then the other 4 shots just go wherever. But so then he walks away. The guy goes down, obviously, because he's shot, and he walks away. Deputies are responding because they're in the city and they hear these gunshots and they're running towards the scene, and they encounter Monty and they say, "Hey, did you hear any gunshots?" Now here's my other pro tip. If cops run up to you after you've shot somebody and said, "Hey, have you heard gunshots?" You just said, yeah, exactly. You just point in the other direction.
Yeah, I heard him over there.
He went that way.
It was a black guy.
I was just about to call you guys.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank God you're here.
That's how you do in America, okay? What Monty does instead is throw his hands up in the air and demand to see his lawyer. It's like, oh, dude.
He was brownish black. He was Blaxican. Anyway, he ran that way.
He was a minority of some kind, and you guys could totally get him. Yeah, cops love that. So just do that. I kind of think this is the reason why so few atheists are in prison and so many theists are in prison. It's not because we're better people. It's because we're just smarter about our crimes. We're not like we're not like surrendering. We're not confessing before we do the crime. I think we're just smarter.
Well, we're rational people.
Yeah.
We're way better at getting away with it.
I totally.
It's because we lack morals.
I have to say, I didn't read this story somehow. I actually missed this story. I didn't read most of the stories. Let's just be honest.
Ryan is drunk, so let's just.
I'm not that drunk.
He was sicky, to be fair.
Not
I don't know
that
why
drunk.
he didn't get better. We all prayed for him at the meetup.
It was largely ineffective.
I didn't read this story till actually a few hours ago. The saddest thing in this story was the guy shot his dog
The
dead.
pit bull, yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I relate to that, and I'm actually more offended when somebody shoots a dog for a stupid reason than when somebody shoots a person. I don't know if that makes me a terrible humanist, but I don't know. I
I'm
just
the
wanted to
same
point
way.
that out.
No, I feel that way too.
Okay.
I
Most
find-
dogs aren't assholes.
Right.
Right. And if they are assholes,
It's because of
their
humans.
owner's fault.
Yeah, it's humans' fault. I would absolutely. I think in most situations, I would find it easier to shoot a human than an animal, just because a human would have to do something to get me to shoot it, and an animal, very rarely. I mean, I've never.
Or to stay on topic.
I mean, it would have to be a danger to my kid or something.
Yeah. I mean, I would kill an animal who's like threatening my life or my kid's life, but that's so rare. I mean,
Started a tangent.
I'm just waiting till he's done. So, I read up more on Leviticus and their eating habits. Well, I never really had a reason before because I don't care. So there are all kinds of rules. You can't mix meat and dairy. You can't eat shellfish. You can only eat things that chew their cud, which are not camels and rabbits. No pigs. Well, secularly, people have tried to look at this and see if there was a reason.
Nope.
You know, they did think about pigs, and that is because they eat so much more and take so much more care than they provide in food. Camels are more useful as pack animals, especially where the religion, originated, than as food. And I'm like, okay, fine. That's your logic a long time ago. I get it. Most of these rules, especially about the food, are bullshit. You cannot put dairy in a pan that gets hot, just a hot pan, cold pan's fine, but then it becomes unkosher, etc., etc. The dangers of religion, I don't think people realize on a larger scale, is that it makes people choose between myth and facts.
Yeah.
And then bartenders end up getting shot.
That is the direct result of religion.
That is the
Yeah.
direct result of religion.
Yeah,
It
it's
makes
dead bartenders. And let me say, as a drinker, please don't shoot bartenders. They bring me drinks, and
They're the most wonderful people in the world.
You want to know something kind of terrible?
Yes, I really want to know something awful.
This happened in Montana. So originally, when I read the headline, it was like Montana man shoots bartender, blah, blah, blah. Well, in my head, I pictured like some big, huge, blonde-haired, blue-eyed cowboy. And then they were like this Jewish guy. And immediately I pictured Woody Allen shakingly holding a gun at a bartender. Like, you know, I can't drink Clamato juice. And the stereotypes rampant in my head.
So now I'm
So
just,
Sean Hannity.
no, like now I'm thinking about his daughter bent over while he's holding.
Oh,
the
no,
gun.
no. You made it so
You-
much worse.
You did this. This was your fault.
I'm sorry. The stereotypes just took over. It was hilarious.
Okay. I don't know where the hum's coming from, but okay. There are very few things that God hates more than people drinking Clamato juice. But sex is definitely one of those things. So moving on to our next story. Raw's Story this week ran a piece detailing 8 of the freakiest sex things in the Bible. And so we definitely have to talk about this stuff. And yes, everyone's favorite verse, Ezekiel 23:20, is in there. So, I mean, you have to have that one. If you've never heard Ezekiel 23:20, just memorize it right now. Just say it over and over in your head. Memorize that. It will pay benefits when you're talking to theists. Okay, so the number one freakiest sex thing in the Bible, according to Raw's Story, is that God hates dildos. So saith Ezekiel 16, verse 17. But I kind of want to bury that headline because Ezekiel 16 is kind of fucking amazing. Did anyone? I had to read the whole thing.
I read them all.
Oh, it's crazy. There are very few places in the Bible where God acts as just outwardly petulant little man crazy guy as Ezekiel 16. It's actually pretty impressive. The first part of the chapter is God telling the Israelites about all of the great things that he did for them. He brought them up, he helped them grow and thrive, he gave them all these nice presents, and I shit you not, he also says, I gave you great boobs. So, you know, you should be very thankful to me because I gave you racks like mankind has never seen before. I mean, literally, this is what God is saying to the Israelites. And then he loses his shit because the Israelites are not doing what he wants them to do. So Ezekiel 16 says, but you, and this is God talking, but you trusted in your beauty and used your fame to become a prostitute, you whore. Okay, I had the whore part. You lavished your favors on anyone who passed by, and your beauty became his, you slutty slut. Might have added that.
He added 3 more sluts.
Yeah. You took some of your garments to make gaudy high places where you carried on your prostitution. You went to him and he possessed your beauty. You also took the fine jewelry I gave you, the jewelry made of my gold and silver, and you made for yourself male idols and engaged in prostitution with them.
Because dildos tip well.
Am I the only person that thinks that just sounds like a fun Saturday night?
That's what I'm saying. It's like, God, just go with this, man. It's like, you've got all these women with, like, apparently the best.
I'm not saying marry her.
Although maybe. I'm just saying.
Who has the money to make dildos out of gold and silver? That's my big question.
The Israelites, man, because God gave them all this shit. And he
I
was
wonder
like,
if they work better.
Apparently, God doesn't have a cuck fetish.
That's exactly right. I just feel like, you know, it could be fun. Maybe just go with it for a little bit, God. I mean, you know, you gave them the boobs that you like, and so maybe you could just go with the dildo thing, and it could be fun.
Don't knock until you try it.
Yeah, give it a shot. I mean, nowhere in the Bible does it talk about God trying, like.
Go on.
I would say, like, you know, before he knocks up Mary, like, oh, maybe we could try this gold and silver dildo thing. Maybe we could just try that.
That was early on. You have to wait till the Song of Solomon for that.
Yeah, right? No, that's
We'll
exactly
deal with
right.
that later.
Yeah, we'll get to it.
It gets there.
Okay. So number 2 is what I call bitches best not be touching junk. That's what I'm calling this one. This verse actually has always really confused the hell out of me, because how is this a thing that is so common that you have to put it in your holy book?
Yeah, this is one of those that they talk about warning things. Then, you know, there had to have been a lawsuit in order to stop this. That's very much what this one is.
Exactly. Like
That's why-
this happened, or else, yeah.
That's
this
why there's
probably
a
happened to
warning
the one who
label
wrote it.
on the deodorant that says,
Yes.
do not apply to your eyeball.
Right.
This happened.
Or you have like a hair iron and it says for external use only, and you're like, why is that on there? Who used it internally?
It was gold plated.
Okay. So Deuteronomy 25:11 through 12 reads, if two men, a man and his countrymen, are struggling together. Okay. I don't know what the struggle means. And the wife of one comes near to deliver her husband from the hand of the one who is striking him, and puts out her hand and seizes his genitals, then you shall cut off her hand and you shall show her no pity. The hell is up with that? How is this something that happens all the time?
It's so specific, and it also, I believe it's the only verse in the Bible that involves mutilation of any kind, where, you know, you cut off a hand for something, or, you know, normally it's either kill them or punish them, but not mutilation. So this is like the only instance of that. It's so specific. Like, whoever was writing this was like, that bitch, I can't believe
That's exactly right.
and then she said it was really big.
Honey, we were just wrestling.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to save you. It wasn't a hand job. I was saving you. And the weird thing is,
I was
like,
trying to distract him.
that's exactly it. And the weird thing is, like, it only counts if he's a countryman. So I guess if he's from like another place, it's okay to grab his junk.
Yeah.
So I've got this mental image of this woman, like, you know, her husband and this guy fighting, and she's walking up to them. Sir, where are you from? Are you from here?
Well, I've heard that implied not as a fight, but as two men having sex that the wife walks in on.
Yeah.
Who is apparently not allowed to join.
No, just go back to her gold and silver dildo or something. But yeah, they're struggling together. So let's leave open to...
You know, and
I've heard it interpreted as that.
And I wondered reading it myself, because I guess I had to go back and read a couple different versions of the translation. But whose genitals is she grabbing? Is she trying to grab, you know, the husband's?
They were everywhere.
Or the, you know,
To deliver him?
yeah, or the guy he's fighting. I didn't know, because it's not real specific.
That's true.
Yeah, maybe she's two-handing it. I don't know. I hope y'all are in the chat room.
I've been on the internet. I've seen this happen, and no one's hands got cut off.
Both my hands.
All right. So number 3 is everyone's favorite, Ezekiel 23:20. When she carried on her whoring so openly and flaunted her nakedness, I turned in disgust from her, as I had turned in disgust from her sister. Yet she increased her whoring, remembering the days of her youth, when she played the whore in the land of Egypt and lusted after her lovers there, whose members were like those of donkeys, and whose issue were like that of horses. Thus you longed for the lewdness of your youth, when the Egyptians handled your bosom and pressed your young breasts. And I just want to really make explicit that the person talking in this verse is God. This is God talking.
To be fair, it was a young god when he was an MRA.
He was still in the Ayn Rand stage of his development. And yeah, it's really not his fault. So this is a parable about Israel and someone or the other. I can't remember. But it's a really awkwardly detailed parable.
It's a Visit Israel commercial as far as I'm concerned. Israel, where we're hung like horses.
No. Hung like donkeys. And,
it was the Egyptians.
Oh, dear. Yeah, it's a visit to Egypt, really. Commercial. That's just weird to me that this is the way your God talks. And I mean, that's a weird verse, but then these are the words of God. So
even God has masculinity issues based on, phallus size.
Yeah, it's weird.
It's I made that guy. He's got a bigger one than me.
Why did I do
Not
that?
everyone was made in your image. So, no, actually, to be fair, the one you read right before Ezekiel, Deuteronomy.
Deuteronomy.
There it is. I read that to somebody who grew up going to church, who went to like Southern Baptist Bible school, et cetera, grew up in an area or in a church where, women weren't allowed to be preachers or lead the choir, any such business. And I jokingly actually read that verse to him, and he goes, where in the Bible does it say that? And I'm like, what do they go through your Bible with a Sharpie and just like Sharpie some shit out so you don't know it's in there?
Redacted.
I was like, they're just tearing out pages. I was like, they don't make you read that shit from start to finish, because that's how I had to read science books in high school.
No, that's what they've done for years, is they've redacted the stuff they didn't like. They took out entire books. You have different books that have, now granted, they never redacted all the stuff that was misogynistic or whatever else, but they cut out the shit that was like bad for kings and certain situations.
Yeah, and
But I mean, that's like now, to be fair, I've learned more about religion since finding you guys than I knew before. I wasn't raised religious. They were like, it's whatever. So I didn't, do they like print versions of the Bible without that shit in there? Or do people just not bother to read the first entire half of that shit?
They don't read any of it, because it's not just the first half. There's plenty of messed up stuff in the New Testament. Plenty. And I can't tell you how many times where I will be talking to a theist and I will say, your Bible says this, and they will deny it. They will say, that is not in the Bible. And I'm like, I have one. I can show you.
And that's exactly what he did. He was like, where does it say that? And I was like, Deuteronomy. And he was like, he looked at it. He was like, oh, and sat back down.
Yeah. And then the process kicks in where they just justify it. They rationalize it. Oh, this means something else. They'll go to an apologist who will tell them, oh, when they were saying donkey dicks, they didn't mean donkey dicks. It was a parable meaning, power or something. And actually, that is what it is.
I think it's like you guys said, nobody actually reads their own Bible. If you read your own Bible, you end up in this chair, not in a pew. Right. But I think it's less about black marker and redacting and more about pastors and preachers with highlighters and doing a 30-minute sermon on a really nice verse from something that sounds really awesome that Jesus said.
But it's in there. How do you not? Like, this wasn't a C&E Christian that only went to church on, Easter and Christmas, or went, only on Sundays. Like, he's told me and admitted, like, I was the kid that toted a Bible to school in my backpack. He went to Christian Bible camp like every summer until he was like 14 years old. I'm like, and you never saw this part.
Why would you read this to kids?
Nobody.
You would half the Bible you can't read to kids unless you're a monster. I mean, that's nothing you can do.
I don't know how you get a book and you don't start at page 1.
Because that's not how they do it.
Have you tried reading the Bible?
Yeah,
There's actually
super
somebody in Atheist Airwaves group that's reading the Bible in audiobook from page 1.
Right.
And it is miserable for her trying to listen through this Bible because it is so poorly written.
Allison, I believe her name is.
Yeah.
And I really do like her updates as she goes through it are just like torturous. I mean, you can feel like the pain. And I like it because I've gone there. Katie Scary in the chat room says, people don't read the Bible. They just go with whatever their pastor says. That's exactly right. That you go to church from the time you're a kid. There's no reason to read it because your pastor is reading it to you.
Now, Katie Scary was raised like that. She was like church every Sunday,
So was I.
Bible study, etc., etc. I wasn't raised like that, so I'm really learning more about it now as an adult and being an atheist.
No. Let me tell you, Katie Scary and myself definitely, probably Katie Scary, same thing. I mean, I went to church every Sunday. I had CCD every Wednesday. I was studying all this stuff, but you don't study it page by page like you would a textbook. The people come in and they read you the things they want you to know about.
The only thing I knew about church is that's why she couldn't spend the night at my house on Saturday.
There you go.
So from that point on, I was like, well, fuck that shit.
That shit is
Right?
Another instance of people basing their entire life philosophies all over TLDR. I didn't read it all.
yeah. And they don't know.
Have you seen how thick that book is?
I was actually raised a little different. I was raised as the conservative and Republican way was my church. It was just as terrible in its own right.
So Ince Mike in the chat room says that the first time he laid with a man in a hotel room, he tore out the page with Leviticus 18:22 from the Gideon Bible in the nightstand. That's the way to do it.
Winning.
And like leave that. It's
Did you
like
like
a mic drop.
highlight it and like
And
nail
then
it
used
the
it to
wall?
wipe up the...
Santorum.
yes.
And I think we can move on to the next one. The next one is number 4, which is more boobs, but it's bestiality boobs. So I want to skip that one entirely, unless anyone has an objection. Number 5 is more boobs and more bestiality, notable only because Solomon tells God that he has nice tits, which is a little forward to say to God, but
I liked the passages they brought out, especially the description of the breasts, because they go from 2 fawns, twins of a gazelle, again with deer imagery.
yeah, it's
Your
all
stature
bestiality.
is like that of palm, and your breasts like clusters of fruit. My lover is to me a sachet of myrrh resting between my breast. And it keeps going, and then it becomes real obvious that Solomon's never actually touched boobs.
Just like bags of
Right, it's
sand.
horrible. That's exactly what I thought of. This is like the 40-year-old
It's
virgin.
like a warm apple pie.
Yeah, and I just feel like God doth protest too much. If he's like, laying with a man is an abomination, but tell me more, Solomon. Tell me about my breasts again. It's a little weird.
I had a really hard time reading this, knowing it was from Solomon. And he goes on about, I am a wall and my breasts are like towers. And all I could do was Lord of the Rings references in my head with the towers. And it was just miserable to read for me.
They were obviously fake.
Yeah.
All right, so let's just skip by that nonsense too. Number 6, I almost wish we'd stopped and talked more about boobs, because this one...
Doesn't every guy want to stop and talk more about boobs?
Sorry. Number 6 is foreskins. Like, so many foreskins.
That's a lot of foreskins.
So King Saul's daughter was jonesing for David. This is the guy who slayed Goliath. She was like donkey dick horse emissions jonesing for this dude. And so King Saul told the lowly David that he'd accept as a dowry, because of course God views women as property to be bought and sold between people. He would accept as dowry 100 foreskins from the Philistines, which is a super weird request.
What's he going to do with all those?
Right?
Like, I can understand a pig and a goat and a sheep. Those things are all useful.
In multiple ways.
This is the origin of the phrase "a bag of dicks." Like, yeah, I'm gonna need a bag of dicks so you can marry my daughter.
So when I was trying to put myself in David's shoes, when the father of this woman who really wants, she really wants him, is requesting this, I figured there's like 2 ways to go about this. There's the easy way and the hard way. If you don't count the ooh, that's gross, no way, dude way. So I think the easy way is to just go into Philistine or wherever the fuck these people are, and trying to convince 100 dudes to, hey, you should become circumcised because then you won't
So
go to hell.
exactly what would your convincing argument be?
So was it a missionary mission, maybe?
No!
like you guys
Yeah.
should totally be like
Yeah.
us, and oh, by the way,
Go
we get
convert them.
circumcised. Yeah.
Right, you're going to go to hell.
Yeah.
But if you don't want to go to hell, if you don't want to be on fire forever, who wants to be on fire forever? No one. Okay, so you got to let me take this knife, and I'm just going to cut the tip of your dick off. It's going to be cool. It's cool. Look how lovely it is, and then so that's the easy way.
Yeah,
I
it's
feel
super
like,
easy. All I can think of is Robin Hood Men in Tights with a little mini guillotine. Oh, no,
I can't remember that
we
one,
just
but,
snipped the tip.
So David decided to go the hard way, and not even the hard way, the extra hard way, because he went and he's like, I'm going to kill him, and then I'm going to cut off the tips of their dicks and whatever. But he didn't even go after 100. He decided he's going 200 dudes. He's going to cut the tips of their dicks off. And all I can think of is, he's out there with his army fighting the Philistines, and the battle's over. And there's David wandering around the battlefield, taking off dudes' pants. If you're with him,
His entire army's like,
what are you doing, dude?
Seriously?
should we get out of here? Like,
Do you need some time?
Because armies used to do that after battles. They would go and try to scavenge their weapons and their armor and stuff like that. They didn't just leave bodies or
not their dicks.
not their dicks. So I just imagine
Not their dick skin.
like him following around people taking like shields and stuff like that and spears, or I don't know what they
That's
use.
not what we're getting.
And like him following behind them, like, you got that one, or I'm in.
and there's David like undoing the belts and then undoing the pants, and he's and I just gotta put myself in his companion's shoes, and it's like, what the hell are you doing, bro? What?
Oh, I just need all these dicks
Now
so I
this
can
is
get
the
married.
stuff that you would think that 14-year-old boys would know about in the Bible, because it's the closest thing as a Christian they're gonna get to porn. That's like next level X-rated shit right there.
I don't know. I don't think that's the part that I'd want to know about.
Yeah.
I'll go back to the Song of Solomon
No,
where they're
I'm
fisting God. Yeah.
There's stuff about the boobs. There's boobs.
I'm
Oh,
going back.
boob stuff. Yeah, I'm all into that. The foreskin cutting off part, no, not so much.
Sears catalog, man. Going back to that. I also want to know, so was he like super careful and he wanted to make them look nice for King Saul? Like, I'm going to be really careful, or was he just like, just
Why do you want to know that?
because I have to complete this mental image where he's like stripping dudes naked and everyone else is like, what the hell are you doing? And is he like being very careful and
Like
ooh,
30
loving?
minutes on each one,
Right.
being all surgical.
Right. Or is he just cutting off the tip and he's like, there's some head in there too? That's what I want to know.
After 50 of them, it's
Yeah,
like,
exactly. After a while. Well, although maybe he just gets good
I
at
mean,
it.
he must have paced himself. He got 200 instead of 1. He's certainly an overachiever.
That is a really weird thing to decide to overachieve on.
Hey,
Like you show up with 200 and the king's like, "You sure you want to marry my daughter?"
Lord, you would not believe the amount of men that he stripped naked on the battlefield. Okay, this is awkward.
you never know when you're going to find your calling.
That's true. Number 7, I'm gonna skip number 7 too because it's more foreskin and involves circumcising children with rocks, and that's not cool. I mean, don't circumcise your kids, but if you do, don't use a rock.
it's super not cool. But I don't want to skip this one altogether because
Okay.
this one is one where God is like particularly fucked up because this is his boy Moses.
Yeah.
And he goes from saying, "Hey Moses, do this, blah blah blah, burning bush, all this shit," and then suddenly says, "I'm going to kill him."
I'm gonna kill Moses.
And it does. I mean, really, just reading through this little section of Exodus 4, he just goes, well, fuck, the Lord came down and he was going to kill Moses, and then suddenly this crazy woman cuts the foreskin off his son's.
Yeah,
and
like-
throws it, like an
Wasn't the
impromptu
crazy woman
circumcision,
his
and God
mother?
goes, oh well,
I'm
this
okay.
crazy bitch is doing this now. I'm not going to kill him.
God is a really weird dude.
He's like, "Oh, shit got too real. I'm leaving."
You saw what she did to a kid. Think of what she would do to an adult. God. All right. So number 8 is Lot and that whole Sodom and Gomorrah thing. And there is so much freaky about that story. I can't even. So it starts when God sends down 2 angels to investigate just how messed up the people of Sodom and Gomorrah are. The townspeople come out. The angels are staying with Lot. The townspeople come out and they're like, those dudes are hot. Send them out here because we're going to rape them. And we're going to have sex with those guys. Bring them out.
Because naturally, if you're gay, you rape people.
Right. That's what you do. Like,
naturally.
I mean, if you're hot enough, then that's what's going to happen to you.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a thing.
Those angels shouldn't have gone out in public dressed like
Exactly.
that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and God didn't send the ugliest angels down either. I mean, these were like cherubs and
They were
shit.
asking for it.
Yeah,
Sodom's
and
like,
to be fair,
no
have you
logos.
ever seen an angel in pants? They're pretty much wearing dresses. I would have been confused too.
So, requesting someone to hand over people to rape is an unusual request, but not as unusual as Lot's response, which was, "Oh, I have virgin daughters, and maybe you could just have fun with them instead." What?
Yeah, going to church, this was described to me as a story about hospitality. As in,
Wait, I'm a hospitality professional. Go on.
as in, you have guests at your house and you do whatever you can for them, protect them, even to the point of giving up your virgin daughters for rape. That was how it was told and taught to me going to church.
Yeah.
So just the way it reads in the book.
Yeah, but it wasn't about rape. It wasn't, and it actually wasn't even about homosexuality.
Right. Not at all.
It was about that. It was about hospitality. Like, this is being a good neighbor. This is being a good host.
Yeah, don't let your guests be raped by the townspeople. That's
But that's what they
poor
did
taste.
to gloss over the terrible part.
It sounds like it was about misdirection.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, to me, though, what Lot did was, because angels are scary creatures in the Bible. They are creatures who will mess you up. They will kill you. They will kill your babies. They will make you tremble in fear. Sorry. There's a mosquito.
Sure.
So what he was going to do was he was going to trade his virgin daughters to this crowd for 2 angels who could have kicked all of their asses. I mean, these angels could take care of themselves, but no, rape my daughters. In what world is that a moral decision?
And in what world do the angels who can kick everybody's ass not go like, no, we can
We
handle
got it.
these
We
guys.
got
We got it.
All right. So then, after God destroys every man in both cities and throughout the land, they go live in a cave, and the daughters are like, "There are no dudes." You were like deaf to like electronics. I don't know, and chairs. I don't know how that works, Ryan. So his daughters are all like, "You know what we should do is get Dad drunk and rape him. Not once, but I'll do it night 1, you do it night 2, and then that'll." And this is okay. Raping his daughters was okay. Setting up this thing where God said, "Don't look at the cities being destroyed," and then turning their mother into a pillar of salt because she looked back. That's okay. I don't understand biblical morality at all.
This is my ultimate go-to, the second half of this story, when people talk about biblical morality. And I say, I don't accept a morality where turning and looking behind you is punished with death and turning into a pillar of salt. And I don't even know how to, is it this incestual rape scenario and whatever is totally okay. There is no morality there. There's no argument from that point From that starting position, you can't make a morality argument to me.
Well, God was just going to fuck the cities anyway. I mean, really, that's what it was. If Abraham hadn't intervened to start with, God was saying, Sodom and Gomorrah, screw those places. I'm going to destroy them. And Abraham stepped up and said, whoa, my nephew Lot lives there, and he's a pretty cool dude. And, if he hadn't stepped up and done it, it would have been a moot point. You would have never had any of this fun angel raping.
I don't know. I kind of felt like the Lot's wife part of it was, I kind of related to it a little bit because I have 2 children, and there are times when they're doing things and I will say, don't do this, or I will, whatever. And then afterwards I'm like, that's really stupid because who cares? But then they do it and I'm like, okay, that was dumb for me to say.
Yeah. Don't put your hands in the goldfish, fish tank. What are those little
Bowl.
things? Bowl. That's it. Don't put your hands in the goldfish bowl, or I'm gonna get rid of your goldfish. And then they do it, and they're like, I can't get rid of their pet.
Exactly. And
Well, God did it. He's like, I told you.
and there are parents in this room. Has anyone not put themselves in that situation? And then did you kill the goldfish? I mean, come on.
I'll kill the goldfish.
Oh,
I'm not even kidding. I think
Heather.
it through before. I won't say that if I won't do it.
What do you do? What do you do? Shoot
I
the
have been
goldfish.
halfway to I have been halfway to San Antonio going to the zoo, and I fucking turned that car around, and we were all going home, and we all cried like a bunch of overly tired 2-year-olds going home because I wanted to go to the zoo too. Ruined it for everybody.
Dude,
I'm committed. I am committed.
you should be.
I am an asshole parent, dude. I'm not gonna lie.
I think that can be a lot about just not making empty threats, though. And to be
no,
fair,
that's
God
right.
didn't make an empty threat. He totally.
No, that's what I take from doing things like that is like, don't say crap that you don't mean. But this is like a stupid threat to make. It's like, don't look or I'll kill you. What? What kind of sense does that make? None at all. Corpus Christi Atheists meets every Sunday at 5:30 p.m. This weekend we'll be meeting at Executive Surf Club downtown. If you don't know where that is, visit ccatheists.com for a list of our public events. If you're interested in connecting with our affiliates, visit southtexascor.com to connect with any of our sister organizations from Corpus Christi, or actually from Portland, Texas, down to Brownsville, Texas.
Rockport.
And sometimes we don't talk about weird sex stuff.
You totally said Portland, didn't you mean Rockport?
Rockport, yes. Thank you. I kind of want to skip the Poe thing because that'll be really annoying. What are we talking about? We got like 15 minutes left.
I was totally looking forward to doing the Poe thing
Do you
because
want to?
you did it last week,
Okay.
and I was like, nobody there is arguing with him, right?
All right, let's do it then.
He was annoyed. He was annoyed.
Good. I was feeling victorious. So let's do this, Ryan. Let's do this. Okay. So 10 minutes of Poe is wherein an undetermined amount of time that I'm calling 10 minutes. It could be more, could be less. I will spend pretending to be a theist, arguing for the existence of God, and see if I can't beat these 3 losers, or at least annoy the crap out of them. So this week I have really gone for annoying, and so I apologize to all of you in advance. And
Wait, just this week you're going for annoying? I thought that was normal.
This may hit your
warming up.
This may hit your wheelhouse, Ryan. I don't know. If you don't nail this one, I'll be very disappointed. Okay, so here is my argument. God exists, and we can tell that God exists because there are certain conceptual truths that exist not as physical things but as concepts or mental constructs, and these reveal to us the existence of a perfect mind behind the universe. For example, okay, so you guys, would you agree that if we found an asteroid, that asteroid is an asteroid? Yes?
I will concede that an asteroid is an asteroid.
Okay, good. That is a good answer to that question. Would you agree that an asteroid cannot be a quasar? That asteroids are asteroids, quasars are quasars, and quasars are not asteroids, and asteroids are not quasars.
I would concur that an asteroid in no way can be a quasar
Okay,
star.
good. Okay. If anyone objects, feel free to just jump in here. So then you'd also agree, Ryan, that an asteroid cannot simultaneously be an asteroid and a quasar, right? At the same time.
Okay, I will concede.
Okay, great.
To get on. All right.
Great. So these are examples of things that are perfect and always true in our universe. Things are what they are, and they aren't what they aren't, and they cannot be both.
Right in front
Okay,
of the mic.
Stripes Pro.
He is unimpressed with your theism.
So these are also things, though, that do not exist as a thing in our universe. They're concepts, they're mental constructs, and concepts require a mind in order to exist. Because these things are absolutely true 100% of the time, because they are perfect in every way, they require a perfect mind, and as human minds are not perfect, they require a mind that is beyond human minds. Also, because an asteroid in the absence of a human is still an asteroid, it requires a mind that is not human in order to maintain that logical consistency. You follow me?
I want to hear a real theist make this argument. I would be so impressed.
You really don't. I can send you a link, but you really don't want to hear it.
Oh, okay.
Therefore, because these things require a mind, and because human minds are not capable of creating them, that means that there is a mind outside of humanity that created all of these things.
Okay, so there's a couple arguments in here. One of them is it's actually a little agnostic, where we can't know the brain or the knowledge of God to understand how he creates things. Because I'm really confused as to where your argument.
What I'm saying though is that the existence of these logical absolutes means that there is a mind that is perfect and all-encompassing of the entire universe, and therefore that is God. And I know through faith that Yahweh, the God of the Bible, Jesus, is God. And if there is a mind that created everything, that is it. I'm not proving to you that Jesus is God. I'm just proving to you that there is a God.
So your attempt to prove that there is a God is that an asteroid is always an asteroid and never a quasar, because these definitions exist. My contention is that these definitions exist because we create them through our observations. I still don't know the argument.
It's basically that based off the Platonic ideal. Mm-hmm. You know, there's an ideal, there's a chair. It's a concept of a chair, and the concept, because the concept of a chair can exist, and it's a perfect concept. Humans can't make this perfection. This ideal has to be conceived by somebody. In reality, it's something I think you're right on this. It's a linguistic thing that we've created, and it's also the concept of this thing existing in an ideal world is also a human construct. So that's where you're at too. But the idea that the concept of perfection exists, therefore there must be a being that can conceive this perfection. That's used all the time, and it's just something that it doesn't logically follow that because you can conceive something that's perfect, a perfect thing must exist. That's like saying I can conceive, and you can use like the invisible pink unicorn. Yeah. As an example on that. I can conceive an invisible pink unicorn doesn't mean that an invisible pink unicorn exists.
Also, now that I guess I understand this perfection argument, most things that we observe all things that we observe in the universe are not perfect. They each have their own individual flaws. They're slightly bit different. And if somebody was going to make a universe and fill it, and they say, I'm going to make 100 million quasars for the entire universe and spread them out, are you really going to make each one a little bit different, or are you going to make them all to your perfect standard that you've created?
You can't make that call. I mean, your mind is imperfect. You can't even understand the kind of mind that creates a universe like this. But let me say, have you ever heard this argument before?
I've never heard this argument
I've
before.
never
I
heard
think
this
it's absurd.
argument.
I've heard similar arguments about the perfection of creation with an eyeball and stuff like that, but that's easily debunked. I can't even understand the logic, and that's probably my problem. I can't understand the logic of saying, well, this is all these perfect things that has to be created in some way. Like, I guess point to an example of something being perfect, because I can't think of one.
Well, and that's the point. You can't think of one.
Yeah.
You can't think of a perfect thing. The image of perfection isn't something that exists in reality.
Like, prove a negative.
No, this is totally, you're talking about logic. This is purely a logical argument for the existence of God. Of God.
Yeah. And no one has ever been convinced to believe in God by an argument like this. These are arguments people who already believe in God use to try and trick people who don't into believing it. Wait for it. So I'm running out of disk space. Okay. No, but you answered it perfectly, although you were very uncertain of your answer. So the logical absolutes are descriptive. They're not prescriptive. These things don't exist because we conceive of them. We conceive of them because they exist. So the transcendental argument for the existence of God gets it all backwards. Mm-hmm. And it's one of those things where if you haven't heard it before, it's very, very easy to say, okay, what now?
That's exactly what just happened to me. I've never heard it before.
Yeah. So it's one of those things that if you're not ready for it, if you haven't heard it before, it's very easy to fall into it. But I think you and Jeff tackled it exactly right. The only other thing that I would add, which is something that I kind of tried to throw in as a defense, is that you still can't get from, okay, even if we say yes, the logical absolutes are proof of a mind that exists in the universe, you still can't get from there to Jesus or Yahweh or Shiva or anyone. So these are arguments for God who don't get you any closer to your God, and they're useless.
Believing in a specific religion, if you were ever written a computer program, there's a whole lot of if-thens that have to take place and have to go through flawlessly without error to reach, like, if everything is perfect, then it must be by a creator. And then if there's a creator, then he must have had somebody write a book about him. And if somebody wrote a book about him, they must have wrote it down in this country. And anyway, the point is that there's a lot of steps from what the argument that you're making, as flawed and terrible as it is, to any specific religion.
All right. Let's move on from there. There are two stories. We've got about 4 stories left. There's 2 that I definitely want to get to. The first one is the RFRA story. And we have spent a lot of time on this show talking about RFRA, which is the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. And atheists have been busy at work trying to use it to promote their own agenda and to turn that weapon back on theists. Most recently, a Missouri Satanist filed a suit in Missouri saying that their 72-hour waiting period to get an abortion violated her deeply held religious beliefs of bodily autonomy. I think that has a really good chance of winning.
Fingers crossed.
I can't imagine that it can't. But this week, an atheist filed suit to get In God We Trust removed from American currency. Michael Newdow has filed many of these lawsuits in the past. This is like his personal quest to do. And they've all failed. Most recently, his attempt failed. He attacked it from the Establishment Clause, First Amendment, and 2 courts have ruled against him on that. Now he's going back and trying to use RFRA as the source of his argument. He's basically saying that, we're atheists. We have a deeply held religious belief that proselytizing and possessing and distributing religious messaging is against our deeply held religious beliefs, and therefore falls under RFRA, and the government should use the least burdensome method of doing that. He wrote in a recent opinion piece, every Supreme Court justice involved in the 3 RFRA cases heard to date has agreed that under RFRA, religious activity may not be substantially burdened without a compelling governmental interest, and laws narrowly tailored to serve that interest. So he's saying that atheists are substantially burdened, and that the government has no substantial, no compelling interest in promoting that. So what does everyone think about that?
The last part is the most important part, because under RFRA, like you said, the government has to have a reason, basically. Like, if you challenge something like, this is offending my religion and it is burdening me, because if you think about it, every dollar bill that you exchange with somebody is you pamphleting God to somebody else. It's written right on there, in God we trust, and you're passing it to the next person. So if the government is going to do that, they have to have a good reason why they're going to do it. They have none. There is no point in putting "In God We Trust" on our money. I can't think of it, but I'm not the best thinker right now.
I think it's really interesting from a couple points. I think it will be interesting to see how they address every element of the RFRA challenge. Mm-hmm. I think that they're probably going to have to determine that it is religious activity.
I disagree. I think this is going to fail, and I think this is where it's going to fail. I think that I think it's obvious that the government doesn't have an interest, but I think that if you tell me that handing someone a piece of paper that says what every other piece of paper says is a substantial burden, I think the courts are going to find that it's not substantial.
Right. I agree, but I think it's the religious activity part that I think that's the interesting part. The interesting part is that atheists can engage in religious activity. I think that they're going to have to determine that they can.
Yeah.
I think that's the more interesting ruling here, is that atheists can be protected under RFRA. And I think that the courts who look at this are going to have to determine that. I agree that the courts are not ever going to determine that they're substantially burdened. What he said later on in the piece is, look, I need kids. I need atheists with kids to come in and be my plaintiffs on this, because kids are the ones who are being proselytized on this. They're the ones who get the substantial burden.
Yeah. I get that.
I have to agree with Jeff. I don't think that this case is going to win. I don't think they're going to overturn putting "In God We Trust" in money. I think the argument is correct, but I think there's a lot of case law, maybe not about RFRA, but every time somebody challenges "In God We Trust," there's this we've always had it on there, even though we always haven't always had it on there, but it's always been on there, and it's tradition, and
I hate that arguments,
but that's
so much.
But that's what wins.
That is probably, I find, the most annoying argument. I think the only way to really prove burden was maybe if atheist money didn't buy as much as theist money, then you could go with that whole it's burdening me thing. But if my dollar buys as much as that Christian guy's dollar, then it's not really burdening me. But I hate that argument. I don't know, how some stuff just catches you, that whole, well, it's part of our heritage, it's part of our culture, it's part of what we built this nation on, and everybody is so proud to be an American because of it. And that bugs the shit out of me, mainly because no, we didn't. We built this country it was like the first secular government. It was the first one that made sure our government did not promote or deny religion, and that is what we should be proud of. That is what we should be pushing. That is what it means to be an American.
I kind of want to back off my previous statement, because I think you're right. I think if we reverse this situation and we say all the money says there is no God on it, and you force Christians and Muslims and Jews to exchange this money that says there is no God, I think there's no question how the courts would come down
Right.
on that.
Right.
None.
Or even
None.
if it just said, in Jesus we trust, and the Jewish people, which is actually by percentage a smaller population than the atheist percentage.
Absolutely.
I think if they got upset about it, they would be respected and taken seriously, but we're not going to be as a community.
Well, they use the argument, well, it could be any God. And that does nothing for us.
And I've,
Yeah.
I have seen this article pushed around today about, in God we trust, but which God? And there's this long list of thousands and thousands of gods there. And I think that that's wrong, because that is better used as an argument for the theist side. It's like, oh, this isn't
Look at
our
all these
God.
religions.
It's whoever's God.
It's just another classic case of the majority, stifling the minority. And I hate to use the slippery slope argument, but it's really not, because if it says in God we trust on our money, it's going to say it on our courthouses, and it does, and it's going to say it behind the bench of the judge, and it does, and there's going to be the 10 commandments out in front of the courthouse in the city hall, and there are those things, because we can go, oh, it's our national motto, when originally our national motto was not in God we trust, and I kind of like the original one way
too.
better. I think it's way
Because
more
it was in Latin.
encompassing.
Yeah. And Latin is always cooler.
Sound way cooler.
But even in English, it's a much better motto.
Yeah.
Out of one many, or out of many one.
There it
There,
is.
there it is. That's the one.
E pluribus unum. That's such a better motto.
It is.
Yeah. I would think. I wish we would go back to it. We won't for a very long time, but I support all kinds of trolling and non-trolling attempts to use RFRA as a judo move, to like use their power against them. I think that's awesome.
Absolutely. I mean, this is exactly what was predicted was going to happen with RFRA when it came out, and with the Hobby Lobby decision. And I think that in the end, I think Hobby Lobby is going to be so torn apart by the Supreme Court. I think in the next 5 years, we're going to have 5 other rulings on it that basically take the balls out of it.
From your lips to the flying spaghetti monster's ears. Like, all right. Before we get out of here, I definitely want to get to this last story about Randy Jansen. Randy is a Canadian man whose daughter has suffered from extreme migraines for several years. And this week, his religious views and his daughter's suffering collided in the absolute worst way. Randy wrote the following confession on his Facebook page this week before he killed himself. Quote, "My daughter had shown unimaginable strength through a lot of migraine pain over the years, and always seemed to try and look on the bright side, and always loved talking about things. When I get better, let's do this and let's do that. I wish. She had tried everything to get better, but nothing seemed to help her. I took a gun and shot her in the head, and now she is migraine-free and floating in the clouds on a sunny afternoon, her long, beautiful brown hair flowing in the breeze, a true angel. Then I shot her mother, because a mother should never have to hear the news that her baby has died. Then a couple days later, this is not funny, but it's just like, dude.
Quit pulling a Hannity.
Then a couple of days later, you're an awful person. Then a couple of days later, my sister Shelley, because I did not want her to have to live with the shame I have caused all alone. Now my family is pain-free and in heaven." Now, all by itself, this story is a horrible, horrible story. And it's not unlike a lot of stories we have where there's, people with mental problems killing other people with religious imagery involved. They're hearing voices, blah, blah, blah. This guy is not a person who's hearing voices. This is a guy whose worldview collided with a family problem in the worst possible way. I mean,
I don't know if that's entirely fair to say. They haven't even really given the identity, the full identity. They're assuming that these are the daughter, mother, and sister.
yeah, because
They haven't
because their house is gone.
Right.
And the bodies
right.
are
And
there.
it's a fair assumption. I get it.
And he wrote all of this.
But
so I think it's a pretty good.
I do. I think it is a very fair assumption. But while we're making the statement as fact that these are the people and they haven't even released the identity of the bodies yet, then we can't say, and this guy has absolutely no mental problems and we know that.
What I'm saying is that the cause of it was not hearing voices. The cause of it was my daughter's in pain. If I kill her, she'll be in heaven. And so, I mean, clearly most Christians do not behave in this manner. However, this is not the same as someone who has schizophrenia
or some sort of psychosis. So we assume at this point in the story.
I think so we're not arguing semantics. If we say that if rather than it being the cause, it is the justification. So this guy justifies what he does, whether I'm not going to assume mental instability or mental illness in some way just because it's a possibility. Like I could be mentally ill. It's probably more likely.
You're probably drunk.
But I think if we just say that it is justified by this,
there is nothing illogical or this person's logic is impeccable given his worldview.
Yes.
Yes, exactly. And I think that's the biggest point of this article. And it's something, if people honestly believed it, why doesn't it happen all the time?
It should. Well, and I think that
we should
probably
be alone here.
I mean, right.
It would say 3 views.
There'd be like 2 people in the chat room, and one of them would be me. I think that this is a man who had the courage of his convictions, that I'm sure he had problems because you don't shoot someone in the head without having problems of some kind. But he was willing to sacrifice his eternal soul via his worldview in order to save his family. And that is perfectly logical and consistent given the screwed up, stupid philosophy that he believes and has followed his whole life.
When people say, well, even if you're wrong and make Pascal's wager, what harm can it do? This is the harm.
That's it.
Just imagine if this guy with such strong convictions about things, imagine it rather than being turned to religion where it said, it's okay, kill your whole family, they'll be in a better place, was turned on to protecting the environment or protecting people or protecting children or some kind of good cause. Imagine that kind of conviction working for a good cause.
Yeah.
But instead, he murders his entire family, and that's the harm.
Well, and that's part of the answer to it. Why doesn't it happen more often? Because that's part of what's written into it. If you do this, then you've lost your immortal soul. You suffer hell for blah blah blah. You save all your loved ones; they all get great existences and running through with whatever running through their hair. So instead, it's it's used to justify other horrible things like
like shooting your bartender.
But
Martyrdom's cool. You can do that. You get virgins.
But here's the other thing. You look at what Mother Teresa taught, which was suffering is good. That God put you here. You are not to commit suicide. God gives you the hand he gives you because he wants you to experience that. So you do it. And it's obedience to God. That's why I think it doesn't happen more often. This person just happened to love his daughter more than he loved his own eternal soul. And it's just really unfortunate that none of them have eternal souls, that what he did was rob all of them of the only life they'll ever have.
And if her life was so miserable from the migraines, that's her choice to fucking make.
Yeah, I agree. I can't even imagine.
Oh, the audacity of somebody like, oh, you know what, you're really miserable, so I'm going to make this decision for you and kill you.
Yeah, I would love that.
What a fucking asshole. You know what? Now, you know what? I totally changed my mind about him. Now I'm pissed off at him. Like before, I thought he was, maybe sick, but really, really convinced.
You don't like that he infringed on somebody else's rights.
I'm so mad at him now.
Can you imagine him coming into Grandma's hospital room and say, "Grandma, I want you to meet my friend. This is Dr. Kevorkian, and Dr. Kevorkian is going to give you an examination. We'll see what he says."
But you know what Dr. Kevorkian never did was,
no.
You know what? I think that person should probably die because they're really miserable. Never.
No, they had to come to him.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly.
And there is that is the difference.
So fuck anybody that has a problem with Dr. Kevorkian.
And this again brings me back to shooting the bartender. When religion makes people choose between knowledge and myth.
Mm-hmm.
And also, please don't get between me and my ability to get a drink at a bar. That's that. If you take nothing else from this show, that is what.
If you go to Montana and you stop at a bar on a dirt road and that's the one and it's closed now, you're going to be pissed about that entire situation.
Just to be fair, if somebody tried to serve me any kind of red beer, I might shoot them.
I think we can all get behind that. Thank you for listening to Atheist Airwaves, sponsored by Corpus Christi Atheists and the South Texas Coalition of Reason. If you would like to compliment, complain, or make a suggestion, please write to us at god@atheistairwaves.com. Thanks to Tombstone to Dead Man for our outro music. If you would like to support our show, please go to patreon.com/atheistairwaves, and you will get access to our post-show content. I don't even know what the hell we're going to talk about this post-show. It'll be a surprise. See you guys next week.
Bye.
Being a skeptic is so much more than being an atheist. And until you accept that, you won't relate to this. That cognitive dissonance that you experience is when there's things you claim to believe in but ain't living it. Most of you say you are the type to question everything until I hear the conspiracy theories that you echoing. And when I scrutinize the things you try to say are lies, expose your sources as suspect, I see your logic dies. Some still believe in pseudosciences, engage in special pleading when theists use the exact same reasoning. I've even seen atheists use arguments from ignorance and see my press to tell me exactly just what the difference is. A skeptic without the ability to analyze is just as bad as the theist, cause he'll probably accept a lie. Just as long as it verifies all his biases, applying it to his knowledge pool, and then he's diving in. So I'm not saying that some conspiracies do not exist. I'm just saying that a lot of them are some bullshit. So I'ma call a spade no matter who asserts it. Nobody's perfect, and just one lie, then it's all perverted. Bring down the curtains on that sad display. The only ways to question yourself and all the things you say. Start the day, and maybe we can rise above and be examples for others to emulate, and that's the way we win this battle. So this is where I'm making my stand, and now regardless who don't like it or how they get mad, see why the rest of y'all capitulate and go with the plan. I'll be beating on this wall until I'm breaking my hand. So listen while I state official policy. No matter how I'm threatened with hell, then never silence me. I know that you don't see this as imperative, but I refuse to lose and let the stupid frame the narrative.
I don't think I'm trying any of the Clamato and beer.
Sounds like a lot of
Yeah, no thanks.
stuff.
No thanks.
No gracias.